Hello and welcome to another week of Political Paradigms. Full house on the pod. It's me, Toby. Theo is here. Theo, hello.
Hello.
And we've got Sonny as well. Sonny, hello.
Hello.
Lots going on in British politics this week. I thought we would start with the two by-elections, capping off a difficult week for the government and the Conservative Party. It's ever thus. But looking at these two by-elections in both what are essentially safe Conservative seats, in Kingswood, South Gloucestershire, Labour overturned an 11,000 Conservative majority, and in Wellingborough, the party took Peter Bone's former seat, overturning an 18,000 majority, turning it into a 6,000 Labour majority on a nearly 30 percentage point swing. John Curtis says the swing from the Conservatives to Labour in Wellingborough was the second biggest in any post-war election. You heard that right. Since the end of the Second World War, that is the second biggest swing in any single constituency. So we're looking at huge stuff. We're looking at a map where, you know, if the Conservative Party has any seats left, it's a win for them, and they will have seats left, I'm sure. Well, we can never be too confident about these things. Basically, it's a disaster. If you look in Wellingborough, the Conservative share of the vote drops by nearly 40 points. Kingswood drops by nearly 20 points. Reform UK doing all right in both seats, sort of 10%, 13%. So the Reform vote is real. A 28.5% swing in Wellingborough. Huge. Only matched by Dudley West, 29% swing. So it's record stuff, basically. It's record stuff. Theo, has it never been more over for Rishi Sunak looking at these results?
Well, there are still things to be considered, but yes, I'd say this confirmed what we hypothesized last week, that this would be another nail in the coffin. There's quite a few nails in the coffin by now, but yeah, the coffin is nailed pretty firmly shut. Now, that's not to say that necessarily we're going to have a massive Labour landslide and Keir Starmer's going to be the next Blair. In fact, that itself recently seems to have been called into question, but definitely that it's not going to be Sunak's moment.
Sonny, what did you make of these results?
A strong opinion within the Conservative Party base, membership at least, that it's very much very much over. I think it is also, it would be interesting to see how it would pan out with potential pushes to remove Sunak before the next election. I don't think it will help them, but there's been rumblings, and maybe this is maybe this will be a chance for someone else inside the Conservative Party, maybe a strong kind of more right-wing faction to push or something. But no, yeah, it's like they put it, it's another nail in the coffin, and a very, very big, long nail, and it's gone very deep.
Very naily coffin.
Yeah. Very naily.
I think it basically, look, it reinforces what we already knew from the polling, and we'll talk about it later. Labour have had a pretty rough couple of weeks. They're still 20 points ahead in the polls. The polls have barely moved. Rishi Sunak is the least popular party leader since Jeremy Corbyn. If you look at the approval ratings of the respective party leaders, Keir Starmer's mirror Boris Johnson's in 2019 and Rishi Sunak's mirror Jeremy Corbyn's in 2019 to feed the sort of 2019 in reverse theory. Reform getting votes, I think, is also worrying because it sort of underscores not only are Labour doing really well, but Reform are also sort of snipping at Conservative heels. This is what Sunak had to say after these results.
Well, midterm by-elections are always difficult for incumbent governments, and the circumstances of these by-elections were, of course, particularly challenging. Now, I think if you look at the results, very low turnout, and it shows that we've got work to do to show people that we are delivering on their priorities, and that's what I'm absolutely determined to do, but also shows that there isn't a huge amount of enthusiasm for the alternative in Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, and that's because they don't have a plan, and if you don't have a plan, you can't deliver real change. And when the general election comes, that's the message I'll be making to the country. Stick with our plan, because it is starting to deliver the change that the country wants and needs.
Now, what I'm going to say about this low turnout thing, first of all, the by-elections are low turnout. They're as low as your average by-election. And the by-elections in the run-up to 1997 were also low turnout. Indeed, 1997 itself was relatively low turnout. Labour still won a landslide. No enthusiasm. There is not particularly any enthusiasm for the opposition, but there was not particularly any enthusiasm for the Conservatives in 2010, or arguably for Labour in 1997. There was some, but there were news articles written in the Times and the Telegraph in 96 and 97 saying the same thing. There's no enthusiasm for the Labour Party. And to an extent, it was true. I mean, British voters are pretty cynical and they're not hugely enthusiastic about the prospect of a Keir Starmer government. What they are enthusiastic about is the prospect of kicking out a Sunak government. Theo, do you think there's any credence to there's no enthusiasm to Labour, or is that copium?
It's copium. I mean, it's the standard response. It's just the default response he could have given in that scenario. If you'd written an algorithm, Sunak has to constantly bang on about Labour not having a plan. It would have spat out that response after this event. Labour don't need a stampede of support, even on a Blair scale, to absolutely obliterate the Tories, or at least get them out of government, or at least even form a majority. And regardless of what has happened to Starmer's image, I think, again, it's not integral that they have a massive increase in support in order to get at least what they need in Parliament to, be in government.
I think this is an under-analysed point. Labour need a colossal swing, as we know. They don't need to get sort of 57% of the vote or something crazy. Labour can get...
Yeah, I might also add that talking about low turnout, it's unclear whether low turnout implies that a certain demographic of voters disproportionately turned out, or if that was essentially just a lower proportion, but a representative proportion sample, but smaller, of generally voters in that district. Unless it was disproportionately Labour voters coming out, that could still be indicative, as we saw before the 1997 election, of a massive swing towards Labour, which again, they don't need to be that massive, but from what we've seen, it could be.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like all 2019 Labour voters came out and all Tory voters stayed home. It doesn't make sense. I think the other thing is, in terms of swings, Labour could get 40%, same as they did in 2017. But if the Conservatives are on 25%, that's a Labour landslide rather than a narrow Tory win. It's all relative. Sonny, do you think these by-elections have told us anything new? Or is this just a continuation of everything we already knew?
I think one thing it shows, and I think you mentioned it before, that reform is real. It's not kind of this kind of hyped up group of far-right individuals who are trying to make a lot of noise, and then when it comes to the crunch, nothing happens. So I think that is, in that way, that shows that reform definitely have something. But no, I don't. I think it is a successful test for Labour, though I don't think anyone was really in doubt of Labour's ability to be votable. And like you said, the Labour's had a bit of an iffy few weeks, but it didn't really affect them at all. And so it shows like we are very much set for I think quite a stark, large Labour majority.
Yeah, I think we're in the zone now where anything but a Labour majority would be, a big upset. This is Nigel Farage on the morning after the elections. I'll get your reaction to this, Sonny.
I think if you ask Tory party members right now, they'd vote for me to be leader and not Rishi Sunak. Of that, I have no doubt at all, and that's backed up by polling. But look, let's focus on this general election. I'm backing reform. We'll have to see what active role I play. And maybe, after the Tories lose heavily, maybe they'll rethink what they actually stand for. Let's see.
That sounds awfully like a sort of...
Okay, so that's basically Nigel Farage implying, I kind of want to be Conservative leader, I kind of don't. I'm supporting reform this time. Maybe the Tories will come to me. Sonny, what do you think?
No, I think he love it or hate it. He he does have a very good point. I think maybe they wouldn't vote for Nigel Farage because he is a very polarizing figure and he's had a lot of negativity. But maybe another more.
Have you met the Conservative membership?
No, you're right. Maybe I'm thinking of them too highly, and I'll lower my expectations. No. He is very right. Nigel Farage is more popular inside the Labour Party, in the Conservative Party, I'd say, than Rishi Sunak in many ways. And I think also to talk about a different politician or ex-politician, Rory Stewart, kind of briefly a few weeks ago, he was asked by Alistair Campbell, would you be in a Labour government? And he said yes. And everyone was like, oh my God, how could you do this? How could you do it? And I can't completely remember what Rory said, but I thought it was all right. But it's a very good point that a lot of people in the Conservative Party who would have voted for Remain or who is more of a one nation Conservatives, those are the people that now deserted the Conservative Party because then it looks like they're staring at a kind of blue UKIP or a larger version of Reform UK. But yeah,
Blue kip.
It's all
Blue kip. Yeah.
New kip. Yeah.
New kip. So looking at Labour, they obviously had a bit of a torrid couple of weeks. There was the 28 billion U-turn, which may have dented them slightly. Stuff dents Labour every now and again in the polls, then they pop back up a couple of months later. Also, Keir Starmer's ratings have taken a hit in the last week. And then there was the Rochdale situation, which to sort of explain to our viewers, again, it's in the weeds. And the fact I need to explain it probably implies it's not going to cut through to the public hugely. Candidate for the Rochdale by-election, which is happening in a week or so, was found to have made some conspiratorial statements about the October 7th attacks in Israel. Coming from a pro-Palestinian position, but saying things that were essentially just not true. Conspiratorial. Some people said, what he was saying sounded anti-Semitic, and then more statements came out. Labour went out, defended this guy for a couple of days, changed their minds, got rid of him. He's now the only Labour candidate on the ballot. He's not backed by Labour. He's sort of campaigning, saying, vote for me to send a message to Starmer. You've got George Galloway down there campaigning on the Palestinian issue as well. This is all in the context of a constituency that I think it's got a third of the constituency is Muslim, which is actually a lot smaller than other Muslim constituencies George Galloway has done well in. So in theory, say very low turnout, it's not necessarily that fertile for George Galloway. There is a constituency in that constituency that feels very, very strongly about this issue, perfectly legitimately. But it's all got kind of in this mess where then another figure in the Labour Party, a prospective parliamentary candidate somewhere else, was found to have said something that Labour decided arbitrarily and suddenly was unacceptable, which was a lot less extreme than what this other guy had said. And basically they got in the weeds of a row about criticising Israel and anti-Semitism and the rest of it. And the Conservatives were sort of over the moon about it, and Labour seemed to have sort of dampened it down now, but Rochdale is happening soon, and either a guy that has said some pretty iffy stuff and was associated with Labour until a couple of days ago will win, or George Galloway will win. And he says it will be like the beginning of the end for Starmer if he wins. So bit of a headache for Labour, bit of a nightmare. They've finished strong, what with a recession and 2 by-election wins in safe Conservative seats. Theo, do you think this last couple of weeks just proves that nothing matters and the election is just kind of, it's set no matter what happens? Or do you think Labour could conceivably screw this up if they had weeks like this every week until the election?
They have screwed a few things up, but then you've got a government that has screwed so many things up that everyone's essentially abandoned them, and they also keep screwing things up as we go, almost cancelling out anything Labour could possibly screw up. Look, there might be small fluctuations in the polls leading up to the election, but no matter when it is, again, I think the fortunes have been laid out. We could get to a point where we've been running 1.5 years of this podcast speculating on the election, knowing exactly what the result's going to be if they push it all the way back to January.
Guys, if it's January 2025, I will become the Joker. I don't know if I can do it.
Welcome to episode 568.
Rishi Sunak wins the January 2025 election.
All that.
Sonny,
Oh my God.
what do you make of Labour and its sort of, I guess, foot in mouth over the past couple of weeks?
Well, I've been a bit, I don't know about disappointed by Labour, but I've kind of just been a bit more kind of, Keir Starmer's been Keir Starmering.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, he's been Keir Starmer's been Keir Starmering, and he's kind of just like, oh, I'm going to be radical, and no, I'm not actually. No, I'm going to do something very basic and simple. So it's a bit disappointing. Although I understand that obviously there has to be a level of economic stability. Everything has to be based around economic stability and growth. But no, these things might hurt Labour in certain constituencies. Maybe in this constituency coming up, if they do win it, it might not be by such a landslide. But I think generally across the country, they might drop from 20 to 17 and then up to 23 and then drop to 21. I'm like, what's the point?
Exactly.
They're going to win. It's fine.
The Labour lead will go down to 17 points. It will be up to 20 points when the Tories mess up again. That seems to be the pattern of these things. It's the 16 to 20 point lead range. This was Keir Starmer speaking after the by-elections.
Understandably, we're very pleased with those results. These were huge swings to Labour. The Wellingborough one was the second biggest swing in a by-election since the Second World War. So this is a very significant swing. I think there is a message now from these by-elections. We had a number of them last year, as you remember. I think the country is crying out for change. Everybody knows that things aren't working. Their NHS isn't working. They've got a cost of living crisis. I think they've concluded that the Tories have failed after 14 years. They can see now the Labour Party has changed. It's a different party to the party in 2019. And they can see that we've got the answers to their problems. And I was very pleased last night to see that we were clearly getting Tory switchers. In other words, people who hadn't voted for the Labour Party before coming out last night and voting for the Labour Party in a by-election. And I think that vindicates, if you like, or is evidence. But I would say this, particularly to my team, there is more work to do. There is always more work to do. There's a long way to go before this election. And as every football fan knows, you don't win the league by a good win in February.
So here's the thing. Increasingly to me, and I wouldn't have said this a year ago, Keir Starmer seems more comfortable to me in public appearances. He looks sharper. Theo, is it me? Like, is this sort of like, it's almost like a self-suggestion thing because we know what the polls are like? Or does Keir Starmer seem more and more like a Prime Minister in waiting, just in terms of sort of the air around him? It feels like sort of the powers that be are preparing for a new government.
I'm sure his policy strategists and his speechwriters have, been more rigorous with him over the past few weeks. There's definitely an air of growing confidence for sure. Yeah. Perhaps not growing confidence, but confirmation of his existing confidence, because I'm sure he's just as capable of reading the polls as we are. There's all of that combined with probably, increased experience in such high-profile interviews and things like that. I mean, he's been leader for around 4 years, but then, with the actual potential of becoming Prime Minister soon, I'm sure that's played a role. But I absolutely see where you're coming from. He did kind of have a slightly awkward, nervous air to him before.
Yeah.
But
like that, a little bit panicky.
Yeah, and I'm sure they've just said to him, look, you have the opportunity to basically have a massive victory fall into your lap. Don't let your personality be a constraint.
I like that. Just pretend to be someone else.
Was that too harsh? Was that too harsh?
No. That was bloody harsh, Theo. But he won't care. He's going to be Prime Minister. Why would he care?
I'm not saying he's got a bad personality, but I'm saying they've definitely told him you need to come off as more statesman-like in order to really ensure that we can grab this win. Because realistically speaking, it is a Conservative loss, not a Labour win. I've said this so many times.
Yeah. That's what they always say, though, I suppose. I was watching some, so it shows how nerdy I am, 1997 BBC election coverage, and all these Tory ministers go on, after the exit poll drops, and they go, "Well, of course, this is not Labour truly winning." And I mean, maybe no one ever truly wins. Did the Conservatives win in 2019, or did Jeremy Corbyn lose?
I definitely put that on a one side. I mean, yeah. Then again, there was the whole Corbyn thing, but I'd say consolidating the Brexit message.
That was a Boris Johnson
was a winning
win.
strategy.
Yeah,
that was a winning strategy.
If Boris Johnson had run the worst campaign and just completely ballsed up political strategy around Brexit, would that have been another hung parliament? Probably, right?
Yeah, because there would have been probably more people voting for Corbyn if Johnson didn't have such a compelling message. I mean, it was a very good campaign. It was just concise, well put together. It had perfect campaign psychology. The mastermind behind it, Dominic Cummings, of course, crafted it to be that way. So yeah, I definitely put that in the winning camp. Perhaps even 2010, and I'm not sure about any of the others we've had this century.
Although people say the Conservatives lost 2010 because they should have got a majority, so it's almost like they fumbled it at the last minute.
Perhaps.
But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you another win was 2015. I think. I know people blame Ed Miliband, but to win in that environment was a pretty good achievement by the Cameron team.
I'd say, that managing to temper the UKIP
exactly
paradigm. I mean, with the help of first past the post, of course, which is basically a crutch for the two main parties, but still.
And the sort of precision strategy, ruthlessness with which they completely decapitated their coalition partners. Because
that was some sleazy stuff.
Without doing that, they wouldn't have won a majority. I mean, they took 3/4, 4/5 of the Lib Dem parliamentary party and just turned them blue.
Yeah.
Brutal.
My MP was Vince Cable, and he was immensely popular. And then some random Tory, a doctor in the constituency who no one ever heard of, just came in and just obliterated him. I mean, he did come back and end up becoming leader, but still, it was shocking.
Oh, that was a glorious time for the Lib Dems, wasn't it? The Vince Cable leadership.
I know.
Anyway, what else is going on this week? Well, the recession. Again, it's shallow. It looks like we're coming out of it. But it's just symbolically very bad for the government, I think. I don't know how much it changes anything. Sonny, Rishi's recession. Is that a strong message for Labour? That's what they're running on. All the Labour ads this week have been, this is Rishi's recession and you're paying the price.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I think it's back to 2019, Rishi's succession. It just sounds good, like get Brexit done. Although actually, maybe I wonder, do you remember in 2019 when the Conservative Party released lo-fi beats to get Brexit done?
Oh, my favourite.
Official YouTube channel. And it's a picture of Boris Johnson on the train writing away or something. I thought that was quite a nice way of putting it. But no, sorry. Obviously it's not good economically. It really doesn't put them in the right position. All Rishi's banging on about is, getting his, ideas done. He kind of, every now and then he'll come up with 5 new slogans and they just seem just kind of weirdly animal. Like the next one's gonna be like making taxi fares cheaper and like banning the colour blue for babies or something. I don't know.
Do you know what the one that's doing my head in is Labour will take us back to square one? And this is not an original observation from me. So many people have said this, but don't you think voters probably want to go to square one?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like right now we're at like square -2.
Yeah, exactly. I'd take
square one might be quite effective.
-2 is generous.
We're at square -10. I'm trying to. What was the? In one of my articles this week, I put, we have 2 placeholder candidates for Prime Minister in a country going nowhere fast. I think that about sums up the political environment right now.
No, but I think it might bode well for Labour if they kind of be like, the party of the money. Conservatives can't actually run an economy, and we've got all these, clever ideas that are ready to be, sprung effectively onto the economy. But no, obviously it can't be good. And you're right, it does kind of send a message. It's kind of this idea that the Conservative Party are kind of, you can feel it with the government. Like you can feel the hair falling out. I don't know. You can see the skin going grey. They're just holding on to whatever they've got, and especially with a very fractious time and a very fractious party.
So, recession going on, more speculation about the election. There was a very depressing headline in the New Statesman. Actually, love the New Statesman. Whether that's sarcasm or not is up to you
New
guys.
thinkers better.
Yeah, of course. The New Statesman had this piece up: the distressing case for a 2025 election. I'm starting to think this is not an election year after all. Doesn't that send shivers up your spine? Yeah, they can hold it in January 2025. I think the theory of the case is basically, in some papers they've been briefing November is off now because they don't want it to clash with America, and October would involve calling it before the conferences, so just wait till January. Or maybe Christmas. December, early December, exactly 5 years after the last one.
Oh, that's so much better.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a Christmas tree up during the if my Christmas tree is up when the exit poll drops, something's gone horribly wrong, okay?
To think that we essentially started this podcast because we wanted to, it was a run up to the election podcast, and our first episodes were covering the conferences. To think there could be another round of conferences before the next election.
Yeah, but also, if it's January, that round of conferences will be a good 4 months before the election.
That's basically the distance between the conferences and that election is the distance between when we started the podcast and now.
No, don't say
Which feels
that.
like a long time.
Don't
and then you've
say
got
that.
Then you've got the whole of this year as well. Oh my
Theo,
God.
I don't know how much more of this I can take.
I don't know how much more Sunak. I mean, how is Sunak going to get through this entire year? I mean, from a physiological perspective, how is he going to endure this entire year?
I mean, can he? Maybe he can't. Maybe this is just. Come on.
Maybe when the election is over, they'll go into number 10 and all the lights will be off and there'll be red paint over the walls. There'll be Rishi Sunak shivering in the corner, just crying out for anything.
Labour has no plan. Labour has no plan. Just written all over the walls. Labour has no plan.
We're looking at the TV.
And,
it's Labour have
he'll be
five.
holding one of those. He'll be holding one of those banners, and it'll be wrapped around him, shaking, and they'll drag him out gently, and he'll come out the front bedraggled, and the photographs, he'll be "What's this light? I haven't seen the light in the last 3 weeks."
Have you ever seen The Shining? It would be they walk into number 10, it's dark, they just hear typewriter. They walk into Sunak's office and he's got thousands and thousands of pages that he's typed, and it's just Starmer has no plan.
Labour equals square one. Labour equals square. Stick with the Jeremy Hunt's in the other room, scrawling on the walls. Stick with the plan. Stick with the plan. No, but the other thing is, as this is all going on, you look at the TV, it's Labour have 550 seats. And he's just there.
They have 550 seats, but they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
That's his resignation. He goes outside Downing Street. He goes, I just want to say, Labour have no plan and they'll take us back to square one. Leaves.
Yeah.
No, but it is...
I underestimated this country's passion for returning to square one.
The country clearly hates itself. We believe they've made a grave mistake and they're going back to square one with Keir Starmer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, anyway. Hopefully it's not January. Touch wood. The Mirror thinks it's going to be May. Would you guys like the sort of counterbalance to the whole January chat?
I wouldn't mind a May election.
Yeah, I mean, is anyone sticking to that? Who originally...
maybe...
Who predicted that originally?
I think I might have.
Oh, Theo, you sweet summer child. Do you still believe in it?
The thing is,
do you still believe in it?
I genuinely think Sunak will be toppled if the election. No, if Sunak goes to January, he will. There's a good chance he'll be toppled. But May, he could fight that election himself.
See, this is what the Mirror saying.
I know he made a lot of jokes about it. I can't conceive of him going through another year of this battery.
But do you know what the thing is, right? First of all,
Yeah.
I've just Googled when the latest date it can be is. The latest date it can be held is the 28th of January 2025. Ugh. Can you imagine? Last possible day. But also, Yeah. If he's removed, say after the locals, doesn't that make January even more likely? Because the new leader will go, I need as long as I can to sort of fix things.
Well, yeah, because I guess it's a toss-up between, does Sunak want a chance of fighting the election, or does he just want to stay in power as long as possible? So the latter, he'll hold it in May. The former, he'll hold it in May. The latter, he'll hold it in January. So you really got to see inside his head.
I mean, maybe he wants 2 years. A lot of people have said that. That means you wait till like November or December. The theory for December is he doesn't want to do it in October. The theory for December is Sunak doesn't want to do it in November because of America. He doesn't want to do it in October because of ego, so he'll do it in December when he's served 2 years as Prime Minister.
So it's an ego thing. It's a pet peeve of his that he wants a nice even 2 years.
Yeah, and it's like January, maybe even Sunak goes, January's insane, so he does a nice Christmas election instead.
A full 5 years after this government. Well, not even. Can you even say this government anymore?
By the way, I remember
the Johnson government that was elected. How many members of that government are still? I mean, maybe a few.
I remember when we were
really
a proper.
government?
I remember when we were a proper country and we had elections every 4 years or so. What happened?
We had this thing called the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and people stuck to it.
Yeah, but it was. I mean, I know 2010 to 2015 was a full 5 years, but all the Blair elections, apart from 2005 to 2010, that was 4 years. That was 5 years. The others were 4. Thatcher went every 4 years. 79, 83, 87. What's happened? I don't like this 5-year torture that we're.
It's like they've got irregular intervals, either too short or too long, but not just right.
I think 4 years should be set. What do you guys think? I'd be happy
with
with that.
4.5 years. Or 4 years and 3 months.
You know, Australia, don't they do 3? I think they do every 3 years.
3 with compulsory voting. I think, honestly, the most important reform would be, okay, this is probably controversial, but proportional representation, I think, is the main thing that would break the debt. Obviously, it's not going to happen because it's a self-serving system. It elects governments that obviously benefit from it and so refuse to reform it. But I think that would be a meaningful electoral reform.
Yeah,
it would definitely like break us out of these periods of deadlock that we've been seeing constantly.
Ask Sakir with his 5,000 seat majority if he wants first past the post to be got rid of. When Keir Starmer gets 39% of the vote and 480 seats, I feel like he'll be quite happy with the voting system, won't he?
Yeah.
I exaggerate, but you know, it's plausible, that kind of thing. Okay, so May. This is what the Mirror's saying. Now, cards on the table. I think this is Labour telling the Mirror to raise expectations, because you know Labour want everyone to think it's May so they can go, he bottled it. But anyway, Tories eye up May election to stop the bleeding and head off mutiny against Rishi Sunak. See, that's another Sunny win. You're very prescient about this, Sunny. Senior Tory source says May election might be necessary, with polls suggesting the party will be obliterated, an announcement potentially soon. Tory MPs are starting to eye up a May election to stop the bleeding and ensure an embattled Sunak can limp as far as the campaign without being ousted. A senior Tory has warned the PM a flurry of no-confidence letters have been sent in. Jittery MPs are losing faith in him. He may be ousted after the local elections. One former minister said he was convinced Sunak would call a May election and announce it shortly after next month's budget. An early poll would avoid challenges to Sunak's leadership and a drawn-out, damaging race to replace him. So, 3 options. This is Labour raising expectations, bit of mischief. This is Tories trying to scare their colleagues. I mean, I remember Boris Johnson threatening an election in 2022 for this reason. Don't get rid of me or I'll call one. Or this is genuinely it and they've had enough and they're going out all guns. I think, what did Dan Hodges from the Mail said, like, Sunak needs to stage a final battle in May and just get it over with. What of those 3 options is most compelling to you, Sonny?
I could see it as just a bit of Labour mischief. I really hope it isn't.
Me too.
I really hope they have a May election, because I think that would be very fun.
Won't
And
you
I
be
think
out?
that's probably the best.
Won't you be out of the country in May? You need to come back if this is happening.
Yeah, just cancel my flights and books and well, hopefully it's after. Well, sorry. I'll be very specific. I want a May election after the 8th. Rishi, if you're listening to me, that's my wish.
I'm really
preferably maybe the 16th or 17th, or actually if we do later in May, we'll be able to kind of like, after the election.
Well,
have
maybe
pins or something.
I think the way he's falling, your vote could make a big difference. So if you promise to vote for him, he could listen to you.
It'll be the second, guys. If it happens, mark my words. Same day as the locals.
Like at the end of the election. I'm really proud
second.
of all 5 of you that voted for me. And I know it was all my cousins, so thank you. And I'll see you in America. But no, it's quite likely to be a bit of Labour mischief, but I would say that it's not far-fetched, this idea of kind of Rishi being ousted at the next local elections. I could definitely see that possible, and I mean it would be I think it would make sense in his eyes at least to have a budget that cuts taxes and puts the money back in the people's pockets, and then calls an election and be like, and tries to ride whatever, not wave, maybe ripple happens from it, and maybe instead of having an absolute annihilation, a severe loss instead.
I think for the first podcast in March, 2 months out, should we get out the spreadsheets and start looking at all the wards in the local elections? Do a little preview. I think we should.
Maybe.
If you want, Toby, go ahead.
This will be a big story. Yeah. You guys ready to go ward to ward in the English local elections?
No, Toby, I think you should be delegated to that job because I think you'd fit it perfectly.
Yeah, that'll be me scribbling. Like, they're going to lose 2,000 councillors. Oh my god. But anyway, okay, Theo, is it hopium? Is it copium? Is the dream of May alive? Please give me some hope.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive options. I think it's perfectly plausible that it could be Sunak genuinely, attempting to call an election in May for the reasons we discussed, and Labour bringing attention to that so he can't stealthily get away with doing it and concealing his intentions and making it known to everyone. He's holding this election because otherwise he'd be toppled, and is that really someone you want to vote for? Someone who's holding an election out of purely political reasons in terms of the timing. So yeah, it could be both, and I think that's probably the case.
Do you know?
Again, I'm 50-50 on whether on Sunak, but I'd say probably Labour had something to do with it as well.
Do you know what I think? I think I read in the Times, and normally in these Times write-ups that seem to be quite well sourced, it's like within Downing Street, the Prime Minister is still optimistic and he thinks he can win. This weekend, the Times write-up was something along the line of, in Downing Street, everyone's depressed and the Prime Minister is preparing to get a job in America. So, if that's true, and he's truly sort of given up on the idea of winning, which is new, because I'm sure you guys remember reading reports of like, Sunak is the only one who still believes, he's a true believer, he thinks he can win. If it's true that he doesn't think he can win anymore, then maybe May becomes more plausible because he's willing to, like Dan Hodges say, make a final stand, fight it out, not cling on. I might be reaching here, but just the idea that he's more downbeat on their prospects makes me think he may just be like, I want out of here. Let's go in May.
Yeah, well, I mean,
took him so long.
Yeah, true. There's been reports saying that he wants a job out in America. Maybe job prospect wise, it works for him. Who knows?
Yeah, because if he calls it, right? There's nothing anyone else can do about it. And a lot of Tory grandees, I think, have been saying go sooner or the result will be worse. So you may save, 150 seats if you have a really good May campaign. And Labour are a little bit wrong-footed and Starmer stumbles a few times. You can think maybe Sunak does really well in the debates. You can think of a scenario where it's 1997 instead of something worse. Wow, is that the position we're in, where I'm saying that would be a good result for the Tories?
Well, you know,
Yeah.
if he says enough times in the debates, Labour has no plan, he could pull 500 seats, you
Yeah.
know, miracle. Then he wouldn't need to go get a job in Silicon Valley. I mean,
Yeah,
who knows?
exactly. I think that is just about it for this week's pod. Is there anything else you guys want to bring to the table before we put this 40-minute audio orgasm out of its misery?
Labour has no plan. That's all I'm saying. Sticking with it.
There is no enthusiasm for Keir Starmer out in the country.
There is no, except for the
I
fact
think-
that they overturned one of the largest majorities in the country.
Except for the fact that they haven't trailed in an opinion poll in like 2 years.
Yeah. Only that blip in the road. And it's a blip.
Sorry, it's been 2.5 years since they've trailed in an opinion poll, guys. It was November 2021, the last poll that had the Conservatives ahead, and it was by 1 point.
I think I'd like to finish with a question to all voters in the UK, which is, why would you vote for Starmer when he has no plan?
And on that note, join us next week when Labour will take us back to square one.